Hi, it's me, Ally. Did you know that Rayman had a cartoon? Yeah, as surprising as it may sound, the often overlooked platforming mascot managed to get himself a cartoon. Rayman the animated series was released alongside Rayman 2 to promote his new game. However, while the game was a massive hit, receiving nearly universal acclaim and subsequent ports to every platform under the sun, the accompanying TV show has been relegated to an obscure piece of video game memorabilia. Was this descent into obscurity the fault of the show's merits, such as the writing and animation? Or factors outside the creative crew's control responsible for the fall of Rayman the animated series? What can we learn from Ubisoft's mistakes? Does this show deserve your time? Let's find out. The first things I want to bring up are the art direction and the animation. The series takes place in somewhat of a mix between a steampunk and an enchanted forest setting. It's like a woodpunk setting, if that makes any sense. Everything in this world is either completely made out of wood and other organic materials, or appears to be hastily put together from scrap metal. For example, the vehicles. Whether it's Rayman's car, these trains that zipline to the trees, or the scrapped airship designs, all of them look like things that could only exist within this show's universe. Even the small details are tweaked to fit the art style, like how the siren on Inspector Grubb's car is just a screaming firefly. The crew even went the extra mile to make all the background characters that populate the scenes into these bug-like creatures. They could have very easily just taken the pre-existing human model, swapped out the hair and clothes, and populated the scenes with copy-paste clones. It would have definitely saved on resources, but the team was committed to the art style, and for that I have to give them props. They clearly paid attention to every detail. The show straight up looks like a painting at times. In fact, the farthest back layer of many backgrounds is actually a painting that's shaded to look CGI. Honestly, it's a shame that there's no HD release of this show. I would have loved to see these shots without all the compression, even if some of the background character models don't hold up and are just hiding behind the low definition. However, the only time I actually noticed a lack of quality was when this dude just fucking strolls right on up to the camera. I can honestly count how many polygons are in this boy's face with one hand. I've never seen something this uncanny before. Like, his movement is so good, but he's made of like 5 pixels. Anyways, aside from some of the background characters, I think the CGI of this show holds up quite well, especially for some episodes possibly being over 20 years old. They definitely fare better than other CGI shows that were in production during the same time, such as Reboot and Transformers Beast Wars. However, I do think the relative high quality of the art design compared to other series at the same time did play a role in the problems that the show experienced during its production. After all, this is what a CGI series that would go on for 4 seasons spanning across 7 years looked like in the 90s. And this was a CGI series that would crash and burn after only 4 episodes and was dumped out at the tail end of the millennium looked like in the 90s. Was this why the series failed? No, not entirely, but it definitely wasn't doing the show any favors. When combined with the other circumstances surrounding the series, the quality of the animation only hurt the show in the long run. With all that said, a series' visuals can't carry a show all by themselves. Writing is the key thing that makes a story a story. If your writing is not up to par, the rest of the team is going to have a hard time trying to keep your viewers engaged with your show. This also goes for the visual and audio departments, but in their own ways. If you're animating with MS Paint drawings of stick figures, your writing team is going to have a pretty tough time telling a good story. I say this because the writing on Rayman the animated series is, well, not very good to say the least. But that's not saying I don't recognize and appreciate the ambition of the team. The series has an overarching plot that was intended to span the entire series, and in my opinion they pulled this aspect off very well. Unlike some other shows that attempt this, all the episodes are either focused on progressing the story along or developing one of the main characters. It's not episodes that were planned to have little or no effect on the story or the characters. Every episode of the show feels necessary, no time wasted. Speaking of the characters though, the character writing is definitely the show's weakest aspect. The show features an ensemble of characters that work with Rayman to escape the clutches of Rigatoni, the villainous circus owner who imprisoned the gang during the pilot episode. However, the ensemble aspect does not work if the characters are not fleshed out enough or do not have interesting dynamics with the other characters. This is especially hard when 2 of your characters don't even speak coherently. It's not like they didn't try to give their characters any personality. They do give us some great character-driven visual gags, like when Rayman is playing tricks on Razorbeard with his disembodied hands, or how Rigatoni uses dozens of monitors despite only owning one camera. It's a shame that there weren't more of these in the show. Instead, the characters mostly express themselves through the dialogue. A lot of the dialogue feels very awkward. Sometimes the characters just spout dialogue without much reason or provocation. It doesn't help when some of the voice actors are practically screaming their lines. The motivations of the characters range from unclear to seemingly non-existent. Half the cast can't even speak, so it's no wonder why it's so hard to connect with the characters. Of course, it's mostly a cost-cutting measure to reduce the amount of voice actors needed. On that same note, most of the jokes that the series attempts to tell with its dialogue fell flat in their face because of how uncomfortably paced this whole show is. Most of these pacing issues are from the show moving too fast. Take this car chase from the episode No Parking, for example. The scene plays out over the course of about 40 seconds. Within these 35 seconds, we go from the setup to the action to the climax and then to the conclusion. The entire sequence, which is supposed to be a big action scene that shapes the plot of the episode, just flops on its face and loses all importance because it goes by too fast. It's rushed by without giving the viewer any time to process what's going on. There's no time to digest what's happening on screen because as soon as the scene is introduced, the writers have to throw it out and force the plot to move forward. It doesn't have any tension or suspense that would actually make me feel like the characters are in any danger. The scene just ends as soon as it begins. In fact, this tangent about the scene is probably longer than the scene itself. Because of this, I feel like the show would have greatly benefited by extending its runtime from 11 minutes to 15 minutes. This would give the show just enough time to slow down on the poorly paced scenes without stretching out the rest of the episode. If a few more minutes were added to the episode, this scene could have perhaps been given a few more shots of the characters trying to outspeed the car chasing them. Maybe they could have spent more time on the shot of the crash. Maybe the scene could have just been stretched out. Anything would have greatly improved this scene. However, knowing the circumstances under which this show was produced, adding a few minutes would have not been possible. In fact, most of these problems would have been resolved if the series didn't have such a troubled production history. As I said before, Rayman the animated series was created to promote the release of Rayman 2. The series was in production from about late 1996 to 1998, at about the same time as the game. The show was produced in Quebec, Canada, as a part of the country's government-funded Canadian content. Look, I gotta stop right here to give you a disclaimer about what I'm going to be covering. The information on the development and production of Rayman 2 and Rayman the animated series is very limited, but I've tried to piece together the information that we have available. Some things that I will say regarding the production of the series are just educated guesses based on what I know about the animation process, and I might not be 100% correct. Alright? Okay, let's go. The series was produced with very little communication between the team working on the game and the team working on the show, mostly because of the geographical reasons and the scarcity of the internet at the time. This would explain the lack of overlap between the characters in the game and the TV show. Rayman and Razorbeard are the only characters to appear in both the game and the show. Some other characters from the show only vaguely resemble characters in the game. This may have come from the game's team dumping a bunch of concepts on the team and leaving them to develop designs however they please. While this definitely didn't help making the show adequate as promotional material for the game, I don't think that this is the reason why the series has fallen into obscurity. I think the reason why the series failed fell upon the show's several budgeting issues. See, the series was originally intended to run for 13 episodes, or 26 depending on your source. However, only 4 episodes were completed, which makes it, as far as I know, the record holder for the shortest running CGI animated TV series. Stopping production mid-season is very rare for shows to do, even if they are of questionable quality. This usually only happens because the budget has run out and the studio cannot afford to pay the crew for their work. After all, if a production can afford to pay its crew for the entire time, most artists will take the paycheck just so they can have a job. This theory is backed up by the website of Emilio Goriev, one of the show's animators. On this website, Emilio shows 2 images from an unfinished episode titled My Fair Lachmac. This proves that more episodes were in production. However, the link to the site that Emilio used to host more images of this episode have been taken down by the host. Now, all we have that prove the existence of this episode are these images and the title. Also on this website is Emilio's resume, in which he claims that the series was not aired because of marketing reasons. Personally, I don't buy this reason. Firstly, the series did air in both Canada and France, as well as a VHS release and a DVD release in France. Second, more evidence points to the idea that the show was running out of funds. From constantly recasting the English voice actor of Bettina, one of the show's main characters, to canceling production on the 5th episode of the series despite the fact that it was nearly finished, all signs point to the budget stopping the show from being released widely. So you might be asking, who is responsible for this tight budget and the subsequent failure of the series? Or you might not be. I don't know, I'm not a wizard. But anyways, I'll tell you, it was Canada. Let me explain. Canada is notorious for the quality of their entertainment exports, especially the animated ones. This is due to the small amount of money given by the government as funding to the studios that produce these shows. All these shows turn out to be mediocre at best due to how they were produced. Rayman the animated series is no exception to this trap. The series suffers from many of the same problems as other Canadian shows, just without animators cutting corners to save money. It was just a victim of Ubisoft's unwillingness to pay out of their pocket for this series. And in the end, I think that, at least business-wise, they made the right decisions here. The game went on to sell quite well, pushing out 100,000 copies in the UK alone, and received praise across the board. The game simply didn't need the show anymore, and the show's release reflects that. Networks typically don't release episodes on these dates because it's practically rating suicide. Everyone's away visiting their family, going on holiday, and doing everything except watching TV. But I feel that in this show's case, it was contractual euthanasia. The networks probably had no choice but to air this show, so they got it over with as fast as they could, which put the final nail in the coffin for Rayman the animated series. So that just about covers Rayman the animated series. Should you watch this show? No. At times it's nearly painful to sit through. The show is unmemorable to say the least. But do I feel that the story deserves at least a tiny spot in your mind? Yes, I feel that the story has a lesson to teach. It teaches us that sometimes shows are just doomed to fail, no matter what the creative team tries to do. Everything can just be actively working against you in your creation. Sometimes the show is just a paycheck for a few months before the project crashes and burns, and there's nothing anyone can do about that. Sometimes you just gotta make the most out of a bad situation, and that's what I feel like the team tried to do here. We can't always salvage our failures. We just have to learn what skills we can from them and move on to better things. Anyways, I've been Ally, and until next time, I'll see you around.
Well, you're washing your hair like you know that you should. The second wind was what made it feel good. You gotta be lifting the flowers and saving your bow and make 'em a live to the next big thing. Don't swing at me. You better be singing gravy, 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 just swinging. Well, it's me, wants me plus and swinging. Discuss, never much.